Okay, 2A. Let's continue Flat Stanley Worldwide Adventures, The Great Egyptian Grave Robbery. Today, I decided to read to you from a little grass path by my home. Bosa! Yeah. She needed a walk, so why not read outside? Chapter 6, A Bad Surprise. Stanley closed the tomb's door behind him and set off, following the hieroglyphics at every branch. Before long, he came to another button on the wall, just like the one in the tomb. He pressed it, and once again a large panel, a huge block of stone, swung open. Stanley stepped outside into the fresh air. I bet he felt very relieved to be outside of that tomb, finally. Sir Harara and his guards came rushing over when they saw Stanley. "Well," Sir Harara demanded, hopping on one foot, then the other. "The scrolls?" "I found them," Stanley told him. Suddenly, he felt quite proud. He had located the priceless giant scrolls of papyrus, and now he was safely outside, in the warm sunshine. "It had all been worth it, and I found the passageway out. There are lots of branches in the passageway, but all you have to do is follow the black hieroglyphics to get out." "Excellent," Sir Harara rubbed his hands together. "I must get the crew ready. Meet me back here in the morning. At daybreak, we will take the scrolls." He climbed onto his camel and rode away, leaving Stanley bewildered. Just then, he felt a tug at his shirt. He turned to find Amici there, glaring at him. "That's who you've been working with? That's the worst looter of Egyptian treasures in the country. My father and I have been trying to catch him red-handed for years. I guess I was wrong about you." She stomped off. Uh-oh, she's not happy. Stanley didn't know what to think. He climbed back onto his camel and followed Sir Harara's party back to the bazaar. He was going to find out just what was going on. Back at Sir Harara's headquarters, henchmen were everywhere. Stanley eased himself into the shadows and sneaked around to the back. He lifted the tent flap and peeked inside. It was even darker and smokier than before. Stanley took a deep breath of nice, fresh, outside air. Then, using his limberness he had developed by slipping under his bedroom door at home, Stanley slipped under the flap. Sir Harara was on the cushion, talking in a low voice. Cautiously, Stanley crept closer so he could hear. "What's that in the shadows?" A guard jumped, pointing toward Stanley. There was no place to hide. Stanley plastered himself against a large container standing upright behind him and froze. "It's nothing," said Sir Harara, clapping his hands for silence. "Just the sarcophagus. It's a very realistic painting on the cover. Quite a find. Now, pay attention to my plans." Stanley held himself perfectly still and listened keenly. "Tomorrow, we send the flat boy into the tomb to unlock it for us. We take the scrolls and pack them into a plane I will have waiting. We'll be out of there before anyone is the wiser. The scrolls will fetch a fortune. I'll be rich, rich, rich. And the beauty of it all is that no one will ever know they existed." Dun, dun, dun. So Amici was right. They were looters who were even sneakier than the worst sneak thieves. And Stanley was helping them steal one of Egypt's greatest treasures. Stanley peeled himself off the sarcophagus quietly and slid back under the tent. Then he made his way to the National Historic Museum and climbed the steps. The least he could do was admit to Amici and her father what he had done. The entryway was crowded with tourists. Immediately, Stanley found himself squashed in the center of a particularly careless group. After a moment, through a tangle of arms and cameras, he saw Amici and her father come in. They passed right by him. "What about a very light bulletin board?" he heard Amici's father say. "What about a map?" "I don't think so, father," Amici replied. "Besides, I think the bulletin board flattened his brains. Wait until I tell you what I just found out." Stanley worked himself free from the crowd and hurried after Amici and her father. He caught up with them at the curator's office and called out. Amici turned and frowned at him. Then she slammed the door shut. Somehow, Stanley felt even flatter than before, as flat as the hieroglyphic painted on the wall beside him. And then he had an idea that just might work. Stanley ran up to the main desk and scribbled a note. "Please give this to the curator," he said. "It's urgent. Thank you very much." Then he went back to the antique bazaar, planning his plan. The sky was growing dark. Stanley let himself into the camel's pen, and there he made a bed for himself by placing a stack of saddle blankets on a mound of straw. Bossa, he's sitting on my book. On straw, layering himself onto the stack. He closed his eyes, remembering that his parents insisted he and Arthur get a good night's sleep every night. Suddenly, Stanley missed his family very much. He wondered what they had been doing while he'd been gone. Playing Monopoly, looking at pictures of their last family vacation to Mount Rushmore without him. Stanley's stomach rumbled with hunger. That what had his family had for dinner that night? Meatloaf and mashed potatoes, his favorite, with apple crisp for dessert, maybe? Beside him, the camel grunted and snorted. If he were at home, Arthur would be sleeping in the bed next to him right now. Arthur sometimes grunted and snorted in his sleep too, but Arthur smelled better than a camel. He thought Stanley fondly as he fell asleep. So Stanley misses his family now. Okay, let's read chapter 7. The next time. Sneaky plans. So friends, have you ever missed your family before? Maybe when you were traveling or visiting family like your grandma or grandpa?